as Muslims, according to Ibn Taymiyyah, right, you hold to divine command theory, which very interestingly posits that morality is contingent upon the mind of God and not on the ontology of God himself. Now, because he's gone, because I basically posed that within his tradition, I've got a question actually. Do you hold to divine command theory, like any theistic here? Because according to the early Muslim tradition, they would hold to divine command theory, which would say, well, you were in support with their argument, so like I'm supposing that you're a theist, right?
Getting into Christianism, we're just talking about God. Which
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
here can.
What position do you hold to, so I know what tradition I'm appealing to? Of course it is, because theists can still hold to the position of subjective morality.
I disagree.
So what tradition do you come to, and I can outline that with an argument? By the way, I'm shaking because I'm incredibly cold.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What religion has subject? How can a theist believe in subjective?
Well, within the Sunni tradition of Islam, they hold to something called divine command theory. That instead of God's ontology being the criteria of what is good, it's rather the commandments of God.
Believe that? Do you believe
No, I don't believe in divine command theory.
Do you believe subjective morality?
No, I believe in objective morality because I'm a Christian.
So do I.
Are you a Muslim, sir?
I'm Muslim.
Okay, are you a Sunni Muslim?
I don't go into that. But I believe.
Why
in
exactly?
objective
Okay, do you believe
morality.
in the Sunnah of the Prophet?
Yes.
Okay, and are you a Sunni Muslim? Do you believe a Sunni is that which follows the Sunnah and is the fullness of Islam?
I believe in the Quran.
Well, I need to know what tradition you hold to, right? I need to understand if you hold to the position that Allah actually speaks, or is this a created effect? Or if Allah actually sits on his throne, or is it above his throne?
Like I said, we're just talking about if God exists in objective morality.
Well, I think Islam. I believe Islam. I believe Islam or Sunni Islam as a framework to argue classical theism just falls short of every argument you're going to use.
Okay.
Because divine command theory, which Ibn Taymiyyah formally holds to, is going to be the position that God's, instead of what is good is God's grace, his nature, it is instead his commandments. So God commands it, therefore it's good. Now that's subjective. Why? Because subjectivity is defined as stance dependent. It is stance dependent upon the mind of Allah, therefore it's subjective.
I don't think that's subjective.
Okay,
God commands it, it's subjective.
Yes. According to divine command theory, it would
get
be.
the contention here. What are you trying to convince?
Well, firstly, I'm a Christian, so I automatically disagree with Islam. Secondly, I don't like when Muslims pose arguments that don't work within their worldview.
I just told you my worldview. I don't believe in subjective morality.
Well, look, of course you can deny that proposition, but if it is therefore the case that your worldview says that it is subjective or entails it's a subjective, you have an issue.
I don't have an issue.
Of course you do. If you are a Sunni Muslim and your early patristics hold to divine command theory, which is that instead
Why are
of...
you so insistent that we all pick a team? Do you not just want to...
I'm insistent that people hold to the commitments to which their religion posits. If I'm a Christian and someone says there's a contradiction within the Trinity...
Not a sect of Islam, I'm a slave of God.
Well, because most gods give a religion or give a message to which a religion upholds. So in order for us to hold to this religion, we must be steadfast in that faith or in that religion itself.
I'm steadfast in my faith and religion, yes.
Absolutely, and a religion is something which automatically is going to discriminate and cause division. But that isn't a bad thing.
Not necessarily.
Okay, I'm a Christian.
In my experience, you're very divisive.
Of course I am. Now, as a Christian,
Do you think that's...
do we allow naked people into shops?
No?
Is that being divisive towards naked people?
Yes.
Okay, so being divisive is good in some cases, right?
Divisive. I said you're very divisive.
Okay.
I feel like your main prerogative here is just to argue with people.
Well, no, rather to...
It should be...
Well, you don't know what I do in my
I
free
don't know
time.
everything. We're all trying to come to the truth.
Exactly, and I'm contending the truth.
Good luck. Good luck.
Well, you see that I've tried to form any dialogue with you.
What are we doing here? You're trying to, what, prove me wrong?
I'm trying to prove you wrong so you can come to the
Why are you
Christian
trying to
faith.
prove me wrong?
Now, you have no idea what I do after the park, and I think it's an insult to say that I'm being divisive in the sense of just arguing with people.
I just said, what's your goal here?
My goal is to get as many young people as possible towards Christ.
But instead of trying to prove someone wrong, you should try and bring them to what is right.
Wait, hold on. In order to bring someone through the truth, we must therefore demonstrate that position is false. Islam does not allow for the possibility that Trinitarian Christianity is true.
And you start attacking an external bit. You're like
Can,
straw manning.
can Christianity be true under Islam? Trinitarian Christianity.
No.
Okay, so in order for me to get you to be a Christian, I must disprove Islam to you.
Correct.
Exactly. So what's wrong with being divisive in these
But
situations?
we weren't talking about that. As I said,
You mentioned that I'm being
before,
decisive.
The root of theism is, does God exist? Then the
And I
next
don't
level
think theism is going to be something which is intrinsically good. It's according to the Christian worldview, it is as equally dead to reject this God, to reject the existence of our God than it is to accept Islam. There's nothing better for a Muslim than an atheist according to the Christian position.
You believe that?
I genuinely do believe this. I believe that you are as equally spiritually dead as an atheist would be.
Okay.
Pardon?
Okay.
Now, so here's the question to you now, because it seems like you're not too happy with me giving the patristics of your early tradition. So, why exactly are you not a Christian? Open invitation.
I believe in the oneness of God.
Okay.
Tawhid.
Yes. Now, you need to not confuse having one God and having Tawhid. Tawhid is the theological account of how God is one, whilst one God posits one being of God really existing. So you have to demonstrate Tawhid. We can concede to one God existing through like some contingency argument, right? Some classical theistic arguments towards God existing. But you're going to have to argue why Tawhid is going to be the reason why you're not a Christian.
Because it's somewhat contradictory, isn't it? For
What,
God to be a supreme being and then to be a man.
Well, it's not, right? Because it's in respects. So, if you look at, for example, Saint Cyril's soul analogy, would you say that a negation and affirmation, what a contradiction is, in two different senses, is not going to be a contradiction? For example, to say that you're both immaterial and material is a logical contradiction, correct?
Yep.
Now, to say that if I add some context to how I'm predicating this and say that you're immaterial qua your soul and material qua your humanity or your body, that's not a contradiction, is it?
You said that again, sorry?
If I say you're immaterial qua your soul and material qua your human body, that's not a logical contradiction, is it? Qua just means respect.
Yeah, but if you say what about them?
So if I say your soul is immaterial,
You're differentiating the soul and the body.
exactly, there's going to be a lack of identity.
I don't think you can do
There's going to be a lack of identity between the two natures of Christ. Between the two natures of Christ, right? So there's going to be a lack of identity to the human properties of Christ and the divine properties of Christ. There's a real distinction between both
I don't think there's
natures.
a real distinction.
A real distinction is just within reality. I mean, there's going to be a distinction between how Christ operates in his humanity and in his divinity. Now, again, if you're saying that if it's not in the same respect, it's not a contradiction, as you agreed with the soul analogy that Saint Cyril would famously give, therefore you accept that it's going to also be the case that it's not a contradiction to say that Christ is limited qua his humanity and unlimited qua his divinity.
I'm not really sure what we're doing here, fella.
What are we doing here? You're the
I've
one
spent
contending
years
it.
looking into these topics.
Years, and this is your contention.
I can tell you, yeah, that Jesus.
How long what have you exactly done in your endeavor to study Christianity? And be honest, because God's watching.
Well, I looked into a few religions,
And what did you do with Christianity, for example?
rejected it.
In your study of Christianity, what did you do?
Well, Trinitarian Christianity is that Jesus is God.
Absolutely.
Which to me instantly was like, well, I'm not getting
Why not?
past
The
that.
earliest sources and biographical accounts of Christ demonstrate a divine Jesus. And that's why you can historically make an argument that Christ claims to be God. And if this is the case, then if he is a prophet of God, he's saying things which are necessarily true, that is sent through the Father according to Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. So if it's the case that what he says is necessarily true and he calls himself God, it's going to be the case that Christ is God.
Can you, because I don't sort of adhere to the authority of the Bible in its, I reject its reliability.
It's veracity, yes.
So I don't really think it's possible to put your argument to me without using that. So I don't really think.
So what exactly,
possible to
firstly,
actually get anywhere.
if you're rejecting this source, what is the argument against the Bible? And an argument, not a question.
Well, if it said on the floor here that this lad is God, I'd ask you who wrote it, wouldn't I?
Absolutely.
And then, if you couldn't answer that,
I can answer this. John, the beloved disciple, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, according to the early
we
patristics
don't
of
know
the
much
church.
about who they are, really.
Well, we know enough of their martyrdom, of how they lived, and who they knew Christ. And the fact that they are reliable is the fact that most of them died for their faith. And this is a demonstration that they actually genuinely believed in what
There's
they
plenty of
said.
people who die for their faith who aren't necessarily
Absolutely, but when we have a chain of bishops ordained through holy order that testify to the veracity and the authorship of, for example,
What
John's
about
Gospel.
Paul? Why is Paul reliable?
Well, here's my question. If we remove Paul from the canon of the Bible, what do we lose theologically?
I'd rather not answer. I don't want to speak out of ignorance.
I can demonstrate substitutionary atonement, the doctrine of original sin, Christ being God, all within the four Gospels, which are of the either people that knew the eyewitnesses or the eyewitnesses themselves. And if this is true, the common argument that Paul is just there to bring forth Pauline Christianity is wrong. The fact that you've brought forth Paul and you don't even know what the arguments against him is demonstrate that you've not.
That's not necessarily
Okay,
the case.
so
is it?
what exactly?
I'm just on camera.
What's your-
I don't want to speak out of ignorance.
Of course, but this is the
I'll
whole
allow
point.
you to speak.
Speak out of
And I'll
ignorance.
affirm.
Speak out of ignorance to me, and I'll demonstrate where you're being ignorant and where you're actually committing something that is an interesting attack against my position.
No?
So what is the issue with Paul? You have no issue with this Paul.
I don't think you have enough evidence to give to me to say that Paul is someone that I should put my entire existence on.
So what is the argument then?
It's just one example, isn't it? I just don't believe in the authenticity of the Bible.
And what's the argument for that?
Well, let's say even if everyone who wrote the Bible is reliable, you don't have one written by them.
So you're talking about original manuscripts. Do you have original manuscript of a 7th century codex of the Quran?
No, but by design, the Bible, well, maybe I'm wrong, I'll speak out of ignorance here.
Yeah.
Is the Bible designed to be recited in
Certain psalms and certain books of the Bible.
its entirety?
Actually have memorized the Bible from Genesis up until Revelation.
Thomas Aquinas is a famous memorization of the Bible. He memorized the entire Bible himself. So, although I agree it's difficult
When was he
to...
alive?
When was Thomas Aquinas alive? Huh?
Medieval times.
Yeah, like medieval times.
Still 1,000 years after.
But
isn't
no,
it?
but like early church fathers would memorize entire psalms of the Bible, would actually memorize
Not in its
entirety.
I'm sure there's a lot of truth in the Bible, but
they also like the transmission of the biblical text is not to be understood as verbal transmission, but to also be understood as textual. And what I mean by this is that church fathers were writing it to each other, quoting scripture in their arguments towards each other. They were also memorizing psalms and forms of prayer, and they were also writing in their own confessions and in their own understanding of the Bible and cross-referencing the Bible with themselves. That's why we have, for example, Bart Ehrman asserting that the 2nd century Christians believed the angel of the Lord was Christ. If that's true, the angel of the Lord, who is identified is God, the God of Bethel, according to Exodus, it is then going to be the case that the early Christians believed that Christ is God. And the reason he knows this is because he would consult the writings of St. Justin Martyr, a 2nd century church father who, in his dialogue of Trifle, mentioned several times throughout his dialogue, firstly, that John wrote Revelation, and secondly, John wrote his epistles, and thirdly, that Christ is the angel of the Lord, according to Dialogue of Trifle, chapter 56. So, the transmission of the text is to be understood as early church fathers writing to each other and actually referencing the Bible itself in the form of prayer or in the form of explanation of the Bible itself. It should not be understood rather as memorization, as that is appealing to Quranic science and applying it to the Bible, which are two extraordinary cases, both claiming to be of God in different ways. Do you understand? Okay, so knowing this, what exactly is your argument towards the authenticity of the Bible?
I understood what you said. I didn't.
You know, an
Affirm,
interesting fact as well. If we lost the Bible, we could reconstruct the whole Bible just from the letters of the early church.
So do I.
Say if we lost the Bible, we could reconstruct the whole Bible just from the letters of the early church fathers. It's just an
Who's
interesting
we?
fact.
The
Christians.
church.
The
Yeah,
church.
but who is we? Who
church.
would? What, everyone would write their own one? Or?
No, just if we were to consult the letters of the church
Yeah,
themselves.
I get the point.
So,
But who is we? Who would write it?
but we're just talking. Anyone would be able to do this. Anyone is able to open the early writings of the
So you
first.
could rewrite the Bible.
Yeah, if I could.
If we were dedicated to actually spending our time rewriting everything.
So I'll give you a good example, right? So a lot of Muslims say we don't have Trinity
I
within.
think you're perfect, though.
No, I think I'm a dog.
So do you think it would work if you wrote the Bible?
If I rewrote the Bible from something given to me,
Think
yeah,
it
sure.
would be perfect?
Potentially.
Potentially.
It would have to get proofread by
So if you say
many other-
potentially, does that mean there's a potential?
Is there a potential that, for example, when someone is reciting to you the Quran, or when you're learning the Quran to recite, you accidentally add an extra word within the Arabic in your recitation?
In my recitation, not in the Quran.
Exactly, and that's going to be the same case for me if I rewrite the Bible. Now,
So if you write it for yourself, I'm talking.
can I give you an example very quickly about what I'm speaking of? Are you familiar with 1 John 5:7? 1 John 5:7 is was within the Epistle of John. It says, "For there are three that bear record in heaven: the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one." That sounds like the Trinity to you, doesn't it?
Well, you've got a tangent there. Let's just touch back
Well,
on
no,
what you were just
This is
saying.
very important because modern
But I think what
scholarship.
we're talking about is just
Yeah,
saying,
the preservation of the Bible, and this is
if you skim over everything.
no.
we'll be
So
okay, won't we?
1 John 5:7 is interesting because 1 John 5:7 is a good explanation of the Trinity, but scholarship tries to argue it's a 10th century forgery. Why do we know this isn't the case? Well, Saint Cyprian of Carthage, in his letters in the 2nd century, literally writes, "Do we not hear that there are three that bear record in heaven in Scripture? The Word, the Father, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one." This is a demonstration of a 2nd century church father writing.
But that
a
wasn't
reference of the
conversation we just
Bible.
happened, was it?
It's a
If we do-
demonstration of how we can use the writings of the early church to demonstrate that the Bible is not corrupted.
Okay, but I was going somewhere with what I said.
Okay, continue.
So let me just revert to that. So we established that if you rewrote the Bible for everyone else to read, it wouldn't be perfect.
Well, no, it could be.
How could it be perfect?
So
It's
you,
not perfect. How could what
it's
you
a
write be
probabilistic argument. So either it,
No.
either it's a
What's what perfect means?
100%.
So
The original.
there's no probability of. If something's 100%, it's not 99.99999.
No, so do you agree that either my supposed rewriting of the Bible is either going to be immaculate or not? I.e., it's going to be 100% like the original, or it's not going to be like the original?
That's what I was asking you. What do you think?
Exactly. Now that there's going to be different possibilities within my literacy skills in order to either obtain a perfect recitation of the Bible or an imperfect recitation of the Bible.
Can it be perfect? If you
Yes, it can be perfect. And
You find that subjective.
if you're not perfect, you can't do anything that is perfect.
Yeah, that's why we rely by the grace of God. But for you, you'd find that subjective. That's
Oh,
why
so you believe that God would work through you to make it?
yeah, like for example, I believe that I believe that Christ actually uses the Greek language to preserve the Bible. And what I mean by this is, have you ever heard of the scribal errors within the Bible? So a scribal error is a copyist error, right? And you find copyist errors within the Hebrew tradition of the Torah, but within the Greek tradition of the Torah, which was written down in 300 BC, we find no scribal
It was
errors.
300 BC.
Yeah,
But the Bible was written before Christ.
the Old Testament.
Okay.
And we can go back to that. Now, the
Which
Old
is far after Moses.
exactly, but this is from a proto-Hebrew tradition of the Torah, and they translated this early Hebrew tradition of the Torah to the Greek. And this Greek tradition of the Torah doesn't have any of the scribal errors found within the later 5th century traditions of the Torah, to which have the supposed copyist errors
There's a
by
longer
scholarship.
distance between that and Moses, and there is between that and us.
Absolutely, and the Greek Septuagint actually demonstrates that prior to 300 BC, they were using a photo-Hebrew tradition of the text, which was still the Septuagint prior to its Greek translation. So the Septuagint is the greatest, or rather the most preserved tradition of the Torah itself. And I believe that this is a demonstration that Christ, or God, uses the Greek language to preserve his text. Because you see that the Greek Septuagint doesn't have the scribal errors of Isaiah's age, for example.
Everything we're speaking about, we're sort of skimming over topics. I'm sure I could learn things from you, but I don't think I will before it gets dark.
So do you want to end this conversation then? Is that what you want?
That's what I'm getting at. I've seen you follow people around.
Well, listen. Okay, so if you want to conclude this conversation, but the way I've dialogued with you, do you believe that I am this enticing individual that just comes here for the sake of arguing? Still.
Not in this scenario, but I've seen you do that.
Okay, then.
I've seen someone trying to convince someone that there is a God, and you've come in. I've seen it multiple times.
I don't like intellectual dishonesty, and again, the God that they are convincing them that really exists, I don't believe exists.
Well, no one's going to come to any religion before they believe God exists.
Well, for example,
if someone's trying to convince someone that God exists, I think you should maybe leave that.
I think it's dishonest on the Muslim because the Muslim can't use these arguments, and that's a different discussion. So. Here's the thing. May God willingly I keep the same mannerisms to which you've seen displayed in this conversation, and may your stigmatism of me be changed throughout you actually watching me, and maybe you learn something from my dialogue with me, or through coincidentally watching some videos of me.
I've seen often your behaviour doesn't.
Well, here's the thing. That's just accusations, and I think actions speak louder than words. And I think what's happened now is a demonstration that I'm not the person to which you seek I am. Now, I think
most evil people in the world aren't evil all the time.
Yeah. Do you have a Bible with you? Do you have a Bible?
I do have a Bible.
At home? Are you absolutely telling the God honest truth?
My family's Christian.
Okay. So, my invitation is to you to reconsult that Bible of yours. Okay. Do some critical analysis of the Bible as I would do with the Quran if I'm here. So, God willing, I'm going to round up on the camera, and I hope you come to Christ.
God willing, you will continue to be
nice. All right. Oh, sorry.
You know what the etymology of nice is?
Polite.
Simple and ignorant.
Oh, right. All right. I'll learn that. That's actually good. So I think that's a good example of a modern revert of Islam, and seeing what the mentality of what people coming to Islam is going to act like in terms of an argument. Now, there's not a lot to round up that I can already not consult with in my argument, but just to say that I'm concerned that more younger men like himself are reverting to Islam, rather converting to Islam, and I believe there's going to be some downfalls in our intelligence. That his arguments against the Christian position is unintelligible at most. They're stupid. So that's just a concern. I think it's an alarming concern on the demographic that's coming towards Islam. So God bless, and I hope everyone else has a good day.